I moved into this house about 3 years ago, after inheriting it from my late mother. It's an old place, tucked away in a quiet wooded area, with creaky floors and windows that whistle when the wind blows. At first, I loved the isolation. After years of city noise, the silence felt like a warm blanket. I could finally breathe, finally hear myself think. There were no car horns, no sirens, just the rustling of trees and the distant call of night birds. But over time, the silence began to feel heavy. It settled into the corners of the house, thick and unmoving, like it was hiding something. 2 weeks ago, something changed. That night, I went to bed like usual around midnight. I remember it clearly. I'd spent the evening watching an old documentary, then brushed my teeth, turned off all the lights, and climbed into bed. Everything felt normal. The blankets were warm, the room was quiet, and I drifted off to sleep quickly. But then, sometime later, I woke up. Not slowly, not groggily. I just snapped awake. My eyes flew open, and I stared at the dark ceiling, my body frozen in place, like I had been yanked out of a dreamless sleep by something I couldn't explain. The room was dead silent. No wind outside, no creaking pipes, not even the usual sound of my old ceiling fan, which had inexplicably stopped spinning. At first, I thought maybe I had to use the bathroom or had heard a distant noise, but I didn't move. I lay there, listening, heart beating just a little faster than it should have been. Then I heard it. A sound. Very faint. A kind of dragging sound, like something rough and heavy being pulled slowly across the wooden floor beneath me. I didn't react right away. My mind was racing, trying to rationalize it. Maybe a raccoon had somehow gotten inside. Maybe it was a branch scratching under the floorboards, but it didn't sound like that. It wasn't erratic or quick like an animal scurrying. It was slow, methodical. It started from the far side of the room, near the wall, and moved directly, under the bed, stopping beneath the center of it. My body tensed. I wanted to move, to grab my phone from the nightstand, but something held me back. Something primal and irrational. My instincts screamed at me to stay still, to be quiet. I strained my ears, trying to pick up more sounds, and that's when I realized how unnatural the silence was. There were no crickets, no owls, no hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen downstairs. It was as if the whole house was holding its breath. The dragging sound started again, softer now, like it was being careful not to be heard. My bed frame gave the slightest creak, just a tiny shift in the metal that made me flinch. My breathing was shallow, my palms were damp with sweat. I stared into the darkness, too afraid to even glance over the side of the bed. Every horror story I'd ever heard as a child came flooding back to me. The monster under the bed, the hand reaching out, the whispers in the dark. I told myself it was nothing, that I was tired, dreaming, hallucinating, but deep down I knew that wasn't true. This wasn't a dream. I was awake, completely, terrifyingly awake. And something was down there, something that moved like it knew I was listening, something that didn't belong. I stayed frozen for what felt like hours, too afraid to look, too afraid to move. The next night, I tried to convince myself that it had all been a dream, that maybe I had been half asleep, caught in some vivid moment of sleep paralysis, hearing things that weren't really there. I left the hallway light on this time, letting its faint glow creep in through the crack beneath my bedroom door. I checked under the bed before getting in, even though I felt ridiculous doing it. Nothing. Just dust and old boxes I hadn't touched in months. Still, a gnawing unease settled in my stomach. Something felt off. The air in the room was a little too still, a little too cold, but I crawled into bed anyway, pulled the blanket up to my chin, and closed my eyes. I don't remember falling asleep. It was like being pulled under the surface of a dark lake. And then, again, I woke up. Same time. I didn't need to look at the clock to know it was around 3 in the morning. My eyes opened wide, my body frozen against the mattress. A strange tightness gripped my chest, and the darkness around me felt deeper than usual, like the shadows had thickened and taken form. Then I heard it again, that same dragging sound. But this time, it didn't start at the far side of the room. It was already under the bed, closer, louder, as if whatever it was had been waiting. My body locked up. I couldn't bring myself to sit up, couldn't turn to grab my phone. Every muscle felt tense, like I was being pinned down by fear itself. I stared at the ceiling, not daring to move, trying to control my breathing. That's when I heard something new, a sound that sent my heart into overdrive. It was a whisper, faint, broken, like someone trying to speak through a damaged throat, rasping just under the bed. I couldn't make out words, just hushed, hissing syllables. A strange cadence, like it was chanting or mumbling something meant only for itself. The whispering grew louder for a moment, then stopped abruptly, and what followed was worse. Silence. So absolute it rang in my ears. And then, slowly, I felt the pressure. The mattress beneath me dipped ever so slightly, like someone, or something, was pushing up against it from underneath. Not hard, just enough to feel it. Just enough to, When it happened the third time, I knew something was wrong. Not just with the house, but with the way reality was starting to bend around me. I had spent the whole day anxious, walking around the house like it was a stranger's home, checking corners, staring at the shadows that clung to the walls just a second too long. I didn't want to sleep in my room again, but something kept pulling me back to it. Like I had to know. Like I had to face it. I don't know if it was curiosity or fear disguised as courage, but that night, I decided to stay. I made sure every light in the house was on. The kitchen, the hallway, the bathroom. I even left the closet light on with the door cracked open just slightly, because the dark was beginning to feel like something alive. I held my phone tightly in my hand as I lay in bed, the screen lit, up with a soft blue glow. The clock read 2:47 a.m. I opened a notepad app and typed the time, just to give myself some kind of anchor. I planned to stay awake and alert, ready to act, ready to prove that I wasn't imagining any of it. But sleep crept in anyway. I don't even remember closing my eyes. It was like something brushed over my mind, quieting my thoughts, lulling me into stillness. And just like before, I woke with a jolt. My room was pitch dark, completely, utterly black. My phone, the phone I had been clutching in my hand, was off. The screen was dead. I pressed the side button. Nothing. I tapped the screen. Nothing. I even tried holding it down to force a restart, but the device didn't respond at all. It was like it had never been powered on in the first place. I sat up, panic starting to rise in my throat. The hallway light, the one I had left on, wasn't shining under the door anymore. I listened, hoping to hear the hum of electricity, the refrigerator, anything, but the silence was complete, unnatural. No creaks, no outside sounds. It felt like the house was suspended in some other dimension, cut off from everything familiar. Reached for the lamp beside my bed and flicked the switch. Nothing, not even a flicker. I tried the switch on the wall. Still, nothing. That's when I realized that every electrical thing in my room, and maybe in the house, had simply stopped working. My laptop, my charger light, even the digital clock on the dresser, all of them were dark, dead. A sudden coldness touched my skin, like the air had shifted. The same dragging noise I had heard before began again, but slower this time, more deliberate. It was right underneath me, closer than ever, and that's when the whispering returned, low, guttural, broken, like it was trying to force language out of a mouth that didn't quite know how to form words. This time, I thought I heard my name. Not fully, just the first syllable. Stretched, twisted, warped. I pressed every button on my phone, my fingers shaking. I tried to unlock it. to shine even the smallest bit of light on what was happening, but it refused to turn on. My only lifeline, my connection to the world outside that room, had failed me. It was just me and the thing beneath the bed, communicating in broken whispers and dead silence. The pressure on the mattress returned again, heavier now, bolder, as if it knew I was helpless, as if the darkness itself had swallowed every piece of light and sound, leaving me there with no way to call for help, no way to escape whatever had crawled its way into my world. I couldn't take it anymore. After nights of waking up at exactly 3 a.m., after whispering voices, dragging sounds, the pressure on the mattress, and a dead phone in my hand, I realized I needed proof. Proof that I wasn't going crazy. I didn't want to tell anyone yet, not until I had something to show. So the next day, I went out and bought a small motion detecting camera. It was the kind used for baby monitors or home security. It had infrared night vision and connected directly to an app on my phone, letting me monitor the footage in real time or review it later. I positioned it carefully on a shelf at the foot of my bed, angled slightly downward to catch anything that might emerge from underneath. All day, I had this pit in my stomach. Dread followed me like a shadow. The house felt colder than usual, even with the heater running. The mirrors looked fogged, even when there was no moisture in the air, and my reflection sometimes felt like it was watching me, not the other way, around. Still, I kept telling myself it would be over soon. If the camera caught something, anything, I could finally get out, move, burn the place down if I had to. Just leave. I set up the app, made sure it was charging, and placed my phone face up on the nightstand. I left the bedroom light off that night but kept the hallway light on, just enough to give the room a faint orange hue. Then I waited. The clock ticked toward midnight. My nerves made it impossible to sleep, so I just lay there under the blanket, staring at the ceiling, watching shadows shift across the plaster. Eventually, my eyelids grew heavy. Despite everything, exhaustion won out. But just like every other night, I was pulled awake by a jolt in my chest. I gasped for breath and immediately reached for my phone. The screen was on this time, but the app had frozen. The time read 3:01 a.m. I stared at the feed. It was stuck on a still frame of the room, time-stamped at 2:59 a.m. For a moment, I thought the camera had just glitched. Maybe it had stopped recording. But then, I saw something move in the corner of the frozen image. It was barely noticeable. A blur. A smudge that hadn't been there before. I rubbed my eyes, thinking they were playing tricks on me. Then the frame shifted again. Not in real time, but like something had dragged the timeline forward by a few seconds. And there it was, clearer this time. Something was crawling out from under the bed. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't human either. It was pale, almost colorless, and too long. Its limbs were jointed wrong, like they bent in ways they weren't supposed to. The face, if you could even call it that, had holes where eyes should have been, and a gaping slit for a mouth that didn't move but somehow echoed with that whisper I'd been hearing for nights. I watched, frozen, as it slowly pulled itself halfway out from beneath my bed, one elbow at a time, as if savoring the moment. Its head tilted slightly, as if it were listening or sensing me through the screen. Then the video glitched again. When it resumed, the thing was gone, completely vanished. The camera continued recording the rest of the night, showing nothing but the quiet room. No more motion, no more crawling. Just an empty floor and the outline of the bed above. I stared at the footage over and over again, frame by frame, trying to understand what I had just seen. The timestamp proved I wasn't dreaming. The footage was real, and whatever had come out from under the bed wasn't just some trick of the light. It had form, it had movement, it had intent. After watching the footage of that thing crawling out from beneath my bed, something inside me cracked. It was no longer just about proving I wasn't losing my mind. This was real, undeniable, and worse than anything I could have imagined. I didn't sleep the next night. I couldn't. I left every light on in the house, sat in the living room with the front door unlocked, keys in hand, heart racing every time the old wood shifted under its own weight. But nothing happened that night. No whispering, no dragging, nothing. It was as if whatever it was knew I had seen it and decided to wait. The following night, I moved the camera closer. I pushed it under the bed, facing outward, hoping to catch a clearer view. I made sure the battery was full and checked the connection to my phone 3 times before climbing into bed. The air in the room felt different, heavier, colder, thick, like it was filled with static. Even with all the lights on again, the shadows looked darker, sharper around the edges. I stayed awake, gripping the blanket, staring at the doorway like something might walk through it at any second. Around 2:58 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. My breath caught in my throat. I unlocked the phone with shaking hands, opened the camera feed, and watched as the infrared view flickered slightly. There was nothing there, at first. But then I saw it again. The same slow, slithering movement. A shape pulling itself forward, impossibly thin and long. Its fingers, if they were fingers, gripped the floorboards like they were familiar, like they had crawled across them 1,000 times before. But this time, it didn't stop halfway. It kept going. It fully emerged from under the bed, its body contorting, folding over itself like it was made of cloth and bone. It moved like it wasn't, bound by the rules of normal life, like it didn't need muscles or joints to crawl. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might hear me. I didn't dare move. I didn't even blink. I could see it, but it couldn't see me, or at least I hoped it couldn't. It reached the edge of the frame and paused. Then, slowly, it lifted its head, and I swear it looked directly into the lens. There was no face, just a smooth grey surface with 2 small indentations where eyes might have been. The slit where its mouth had been before was open again, wider this time. I couldn't hear anything, but I felt it, like a hum in the back of my skull, like it was trying to speak to me without sound. Then it did something new. It rose. Its limbs cracked, bent backward, shifted until it stood, hunched, inches from the edge of the bed. I watched the outline of my mattress lift slightly in the footage. My own body, on screen, twitched beneath the blanket. I didn't even remember moving, but there I was, turning slightly in my sleep, and it stood over me, watching, breathing. The footage skipped, forward in 3-second intervals, and with each skip, the thing got closer to the wall. It didn't retreat under the bed this time. It simply turned, twisted sideways, and slid itself through a crack in the wall that hadn't been there before. By morning, there was nothing to see. No marks, no evidence of any crack. The wall looked perfectly normal, but I knew what I saw. I watched it happen. That thing had crawled out from under my bed and vanished through the wall like it belonged there, like it had always belonged there. The camera didn't glitch again after that. Everything returned to normal in the feed. But I didn't feel normal. The room didn't feel normal. The space beneath the bed didn't feel like empty space anymore. It felt like a door, a passage, something waiting to be opened again. By the 6th night, something in me had shifted. I was no longer just afraid. I was aware that this wasn't something I could run from or even fight. It wasn't just a haunting or some urban legend I'd stumbled into. It felt older, deeper, like the house itself had teeth, and I'd unknowingly laid down in its mouth. I spent that day moving through my home like a visitor, touching objects like I was seeing them for the last time. Every mirror, every door frame, every creak in the floorboard held a secret I didn't want to understand, but part of me needed to. I needed to know why it had chosen me, why it had waited, why it was still coming back. I thought maybe, if I confronted it, if I asked, if I reached out, it might respond. So that night, instead of setting up the camera, instead of turning on every light, I turned everything off. I lit a single candle, and placed it at the edge of the nightstand, its tiny flame flickering in the still air. I left the room quiet. No music, no phone, no distraction. I lay in the center of the bed, eyes open, breathing steady, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. I whispered once into the darkness, asking, "What do you want?" For nearly half an hour, nothing happened. The room remained still. The candle flame wavered occasionally, but otherwise there was no sign. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., the temperature dropped so suddenly I gasped. My breath came out in a soft cloud. The candle flickered once, twice, then stood straight, unmoving, as if even the air had stopped breathing. And then I heard it, the dragging sound, louder than ever. Not just beneath the bed this time, but around me, behind the walls, above the ceiling, beneath the floorboards, like it was in the structure of the house itself. The whispers started again, but they were no longer just whispers. They were layered, stacked voices, dozens of them, maybe more, some high-pitched, some deep and rattling, all speaking in a language I didn't understand but somehow felt in my bones. It surrounded me, filled the space, crawled into my ears and echoed in my head. I couldn't cover my ears. Something held my arms down. I hadn't noticed it, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed again, just like the first night, except this time it wasn't sleep holding me down. It was something else, something intentional. From the corner of the room, the shadows began to shift. They stretched unnaturally, like ink spilling across water, pulling themselves toward the bed. The walls began to pulse gently, almost as if they were breathing in sync with the whispers, and then it appeared. Not from under the bed this time, but from the wall. The same crack I had seen in the footage was there again, spreading open like a mouth, and out of it came that thing. But it wasn't alone now. Behind it were others, dozens of them, all crawling, all watching. Their bodies moved in jerks like puppets without strings, their mouths open but not speaking. The whispers weren't coming from them. They were coming from the space between them, from the crack itself, like the doorway was alive. They surrounded the bed, forming a ring of stillness, just watching. The pressure in the room was unbearable, like gravity itself had doubled. One of them reached out, its hand inches from my face, but it didn't touch me. It hovered there, trembling slightly, as if waiting for something. Permission, maybe, or recognition. My body trembled under the weight of their gaze, under the silence that followed the chorus of whispers. Then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the things began to retreat. Not crawling back, but melting into the floor, the walls, the shadows themselves. Only one remained, still at the foot of my bed, staring without eyes, mouth open, as if to speak, but no words came. Just the sensation that I had been marked, chosen, claimed by something older than fear.